Welcome back to the Piping Pastor. Well, the corn cob is out, so that means it's time for some more wit and wisdom. I'd like to begin by, first of all, saying how happy I was to see Brother Rob up and about. Like many of you in the YTPC, I also have back issues. Another thing that kind of binds us all together. So yeah, I know what that's like when you're laid up and just everything hurts. So I was very happy to see you up and moving about your property, and very clever use of a box truck to turn it into that large camper. You should do a video sometime on how you built that thing out. In any case, two things. First of all, I want to share this little tidbit that I use, because I know oftentimes there's so many content creators in the YTPC that we often don't talk about pipe stuff. I mean, beyond the discussion of what pipe you're smoking, which for me, of course, is the corn cob, and in it I'm smoking Elizabethan mixture, so enjoying a little vapor this afternoon. But because we all have different niches and different areas of expertise that we share, myself included, we oftentimes don't talk about the pipe aspect of what kind of draws us together. And in point of fact, we don't really need to. There's a lot of existent content out there about the basics of pipe smoking. Of course, Mutton Chop would probably be the index to go to for all things pipe related if you're just beginning to smoke a pipe. And then tobacco reviews are all over the place with various different people talking about tobaccos and stuff. But it doesn't mean we should, avoid those topics. And as I was preparing my pipe today for this video, I thought I should share this, because I found it to have been very, very helpful. Now, I know many of you, for your tray for rubbing out your tobaccos and so forth, oftentimes most of you use or have seen used those leather trays. They button up in the corners and creates a little tray for you to rub your tobacco out in. And while those are useful, I found this little thing here at a charity shop, which are wonderful little troves of various different accoutrements that you can use in your pipe smoking journey. But I found this to be the best thing for me, because it's large enough, of course, to hold tobacco as I rub it out. It's got an edge, so it keeps the tobacco in. But the thing that I find most helpful is, because it's in the shape of a leaf, it comes down to a point right here. So after I rub the tobacco out and let it sit and dry if I need to or what have you, and I load the pipe in here, there's always those little bits that are in, and I can just hold my pipe like this with my hand around it, and then use this and dips those last little bits like kindling on top of the pipe. And these little trays, these little candy dishes and things like that, you go into any charity shop or rehouse, any place like that, they have dozens and dozens of all kinds of things like this in various different shapes and sizes, and they're like $1 usually at the most. So you can help out a charity by buying something from there, and then use something that is, or buy something that's very, very useful. And it kind of looks nice. It's something, it's a little particular. It's a little bit different, and it works really well for a rubbing tray. So here's my little pipe related content for this video. Now onto the video. I've had several new subscribers recently, so first of all, thank you all for signing on and listening to me ramble on occasion about theological items and poetry and men's fashions and all kinds of things like that. I'm very grateful that you have come along. And in most cases, those of you who have channels of your own, I always try to sub back as soon as you subscribe to me. I don't always get it right away. Sometimes I get a notification on my phone and I'm at work or I'm doing something else and I don't sub back right away, and then I forget. That happened with me in the pipe shed. I think Spencer subscribed to me and I forgot to subscribe to him for like a month. But I do eventually. I think it's important that we all support each other. But in all these various different recent subscriptions that I've had join my channel, there's a lot of different worldviews. Again, when it is a content creator who subscribes, and I try to sub back, I look at their videos and kind of see where they're at and what they're doing and what kind of content they put out there. And there's let's say I can't even define the amount of different worldviews that are on there when it comes to a religion and personal philosophies and political views and all these various different things. And the YTPC itself is a very wide community in that. From liberal to conservative political views across the world, really, and then, different religious views, different religious faith traditions, some who don't follow any faith traditions at all, and so on and so forth. So I was thinking about that as I was reading through my my little Twain book today, and I came across this quote that I thought was really rather poignant. We despise all reverences and all objects of reverence which are outside the pale of our own list of sacred things. And yet, with strange inconsistency, we are shocked when other people despise and defile the things which are holy to us. And again, Twain had a somewhat negative view of humanity, especially later in his years. Perhaps a bit cynical in a funny kind of way. But what he's pointing out there, of course, is that we get into our own lanes, we get into our own echo chambers and reinforce our own ideals with people of like minds and assume that everyone else should think the same things. Of course, everyone thinks this way because I think this way and my friends think this way. This way makes sense, right? It's our view. It's from our side. And any other view that is other is aberrant. It's the opposition. It's wrong. It has to be. Because if it's not wrong, then there's a possibility of me being wrong. And it's that view, it's that contention, that inability to even listen to someone else's view or think about someone else's view that creates dissension. It's not the differences in ideals themselves, although that certainly creates conflict. What creates dissension, what creates the splitting and the splintering, is the inability we have, seemingly, to look at the world through someone else's eyes and truly listen to and take on board what it is that they're saying and listen to them. Like maybe I don't have all the answers. People often look at Christianity as an exclusivist religion, wherein there's a very narrow view, and if you don't follow within that narrow view, then you're wrong, you're outside. Now, while it's true, there are certain doctrinal statements that most people in the Christian community adhere to. There certainly is a wide array of views of how to interpret those. And I'm not just talking about, just Catholics and Protestants, but the million denominations of Protestants that we have, right? That's how churches get split. And it was especially prevalent in the early church, and then I'd say in the last couple of 100 years, it was after Luther, when everything just said, well, I have this idea and I have this idea, and if you have that idea, then you're wrong, and I have to go over here. But if you look up in the Bible where God speaks about dissension in groups, about backbiting, gossip, slander, so on and so forth, there are a slew of references. God hates it when we have those kind of dissents in groups and we bicker amongst ourselves and we split up the body of believers. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't have healthy debates, right? It's not that we can't have differences of opinion. But the dissension, the splitting, the breaking up of the group comes when we get so entrenched in our positions and we label the person as other that we cease to listen to them. And the reason God hates that is because when we cease to listen to the other person, when we become so convinced of our own truths, we oftentimes, not every time, but oftentimes start setting ourselves up as the center of that truth. I know what's right. I read this and I understand this in this way. My political view is correct because of A, B, and C. It's I and me. It's very self-centric. It sets us apart and sets the other people as other, that we're not loving our neighbor as ourselves. Because it doesn't say love your neighbor as yourself as long as you have the same political or religious view, right? It just says to love them. But if you're focused on yourself and your own views and proving to everyone else that you're right, you're not really loving them. You can offer the truth to them in a loving way. Of course, if the building's on fire, you know where the exit is. It would not be loving to not tell them where the exit is, right? But do that in love, not in some kind of self-righteous manner where you're saying, I have the answers. Because the truth of the matter is, we don't really have all the answers. That comes from the ontological source of all truth, which is not us. That's how we create dissension. That's how we create splits. When we start to think of our own selves as the sacred center of all knowledge. And that's what I really like about this community. Even though we have very, very different views across the spectrum of beliefs, we all can have a congenial discussion about it, comment on each other's videos, raise questions, bring things up, have a discussion back and forth, agree to disagree, but do it in a congenial manner. And that way, we can all maybe have our own worldview affected a little bit. And we can look at the source of our own truth in a different way and maybe understand it a little bit deeper and a little bit better once we get our own egos out of the picture. And then, maybe we can prove Twain wrong. At least in a small way, in a small community. Well, that is it for this time. I'm going to turn my attention back to my corn cob here and my Elizabethan mixture. I hope you have a lovely week. Always happy reading.